What's up, y'all? Professor Green here. This is Chapter 1, Africa Before Enslavement. So before we begin this course, I want to be very clear about something important. African American history does not begin with slavery. It does not begin with slavery. Say it with me. It does not begin with slavery. It begins with Africa, with people, with culture, with systems, civilizations that existed long before European contact. So too often, history starts us at this trauma, at this bondage, at slavery, at enslavement. But today we want to start with origin. We want to start with dignity, unity, and community. So what Umoja, U-M-O-J-A, calls us to remember. One thing to highlight is Africa as a foundation. So Africa is the second largest continent in the world, and it is one of the most geographically diverse places on Earth. It includes deserts, rainforests, grasslands, and major river systems like the Nile and the Niger. This matters because geography shapes culture. Where people live determine how they farm. Where people live determines how they farm, right? So trade, govern, and build community. So Africa was never a single story. It was many worlds developing at the same time. It was the birthplace of humanity. So one of the most important truths that we'll return to again and again in all of this is that all humans originate in Africa. Ooh, yes, this is true. Every human being alive today shares African ancestry. Early humans in Africa developed tools, used fire, built shelters, and migrated outward across the globe. This means Africa is not a footnote in world history. It is the beginning of human history. Come on, somebody say human history. Ancient African civilizations. Long before Europe developed modern nation states, Africa already had cities, they had trade networks, they had political hierarchies, religious systems, and centers of learning. Civilizations like ancient Egypt, Nubia, Ghana, Mali, Songhai, they were all powerful not because of chaos, but because of organization, trade, law, education, and governance. This directly challenges the myth that Africa was uncivilized, the myth that created later that justified the exploitation, not because it was historically true. So West Africa and cultural continuity. Most Africans who were enslaved and brought to Americas came from West and Central Africa. They did not arrive empty-handed. They brought with them strong family and kinship systems. They brought oral traditions and storytelling, music, rhythm, call and response, agricultural knowledge, especially rice cultivation, spiritual systems rooted in ancestors and community. Even under violence and terror and rape, and all these crazy things that happen, captivity, African people carried culture with them. Slavery, it was a crucial distinction. It is important for us to really clarify and bring clarity to something early. So slavery actually existed in parts of Africa. You know, it was not just race-based or permanent or hereditary. It was the systems that developed in the Americas, these race-based chattel slavery, that was something new, right? And so it was a European invention designed to create permanent inequality. Understanding this distinction helps us to avoid blaming African societies for a system imposed on them. And in closing, so as we move forward in this course, remember this. African American history begins with builders, thinkers, traders, artists, and communities, not with change, y'all. So slavery is a part of the story, but it is not the origin story. I want you to think of this question and reflect on it. Is how does learning about Africa before slavery change the way you understand African American history? Peace.